Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Basti here, and in today's video I wanted to talk about the reality of living paycheck to paycheck and some of the reasons why a lot of our friends and family are in the vicious cycle of not being able to save and the potential of being left behind and having that feeling of never catching up. And in this video, I wanted to develop 3 case scenarios based on actual consumer data. A base case, best and worst, on actual data from the Federal Reserve and different census bureaus to paint a picture on what a typical American spends their money on and what amount of savings, essentially where their money is going and what they're doing to survive. With that being said, there are going to be many variations to that median data based on where you live. So this is why I took the median numbers instead of averages, because it's a more reflection of what the actual American makes and spends their money on. You don't have to worry about significant outliers as much with high earners and people who aren't working. Before I get into each case and the numbers behind what the reality is for many Americans, I wanted to be clear and state my own motivation in making this video and understanding the reality of the current American experience. Working minimum wage jobs for over 6 years, dealing with shitty managers, and seeing my bank account slowly go negative almost every month, and racking up tons of debt on credit cards really motivated me and enlightened me to not only understand personal finance, but how the money and monetary system works, not only for myself so I can chase my own financial freedom, but it's part of the reason why I put out these videos and want to understand other people's perspectives in hopes of learning from them, spreading really profound knowledge to the masses. Because as someone who really appreciates America as a country where it's supposed to be the most prosperous and blessed country from the outside world looking in. But sadly, that really isn't the case anymore. More and more Americans are struggling to feed themselves, pay their rent, and just stay alive with all these burdening expenses. And I really love my country. I love its history, for better or for worse. I think America has done a lot of great things to improve and make a fair and just society. I'm hoping, knowing the monetary system and how money flows at an institutional level, knowing that really sparked my passion for finance, knowing how the socioeconomic system works. And a lot of people are in denial with the true reality of the situation. And it's a shame that we've gotten to this point. And truly the only way to reverse our circumstances is to educate as many people as possible in the true reality of the situation and to come to terms with it. There's also this overwhelming sense of stress and burden from finances. That's because money is so intricate within our society. It's a very big burden on people. At least in my lifetime, I've seen it grow exponentially in the last 5 years, but 15 years, people not being able to buy eggs, bread, or having to get evicted just because our monetary system has really failed the lower and middle class. That's where my motivation really lies in this, and I'm hoping if you're watching this video, the numbers can really speak to you and help you give a different perspective on how the American situation is, and I'm sure it is similar to other Western countries. So in the US, 2025, median household income is around $70,000 and between 50 and 60K individually, which sounds decent until you break down the costs. Before taxes, take home is maybe 50 to 55,000 after everything individually, and the real downside to this is in the past 15 to 20 years, the cost of living has soared while wages had stayed flat for decades. All you have to do is look to the federal minimum wage as an example to see that it hasn't changed in decades at around $7 per hour. The math is just not working anymore. Expenses are piling up while wages are staying stagnant, leading to an inability for the middle and lower class to save and accumulate wealth for their future generations. Expenses absorb almost all of a person's income, leaving little or no room for savings, with an average saving rate from the Federal Reserve of around 5%. So if we take that 5% number from the individual income numbers to household income numbers I just talked about, this gives us a savings of only $1,500 to $3,800 per year, which is just one emergency away from sucking all that year's worth of savings dry. This just doesn't leave anything for emergencies, retirement, or investment. And this brings me to why Americans can barely pay rent and why this high cost of living doesn't allow for savings and the future possibility of owning one's own home. Currently, rent stands between $1,600 and $2,000 nationwide, but may vary depending on where you live, being much cheaper or some places being much higher, like California. $2,000 is 30 to 40% of that median income number, even though from a financially healthy perspective, rent is supposed to be around 25% max of your take-home pay monthly. Housing costs have doubled while wages have went up, maybe 10 to 15%. In some cases, rent alone kills any chance of people saving in the US. Also factoring in that Americans are living further and further away from their workplace and having to commute further to avoid these outrageous rent prices and are spending more time in traffic, on gas prices, insurance, and cars, where in other decades they could live closer to their workplace because the rent was more manageable. We're only a few minutes into this video and you're slowly realizing, based off income and rent alone, why so many Americans are feeling stuck and the systematic reality of our current economy and why it is so hard to build wealth for many of our friends and family. This brings me to the 3 different scenarios I talked about earlier. I want you to put yourself where you might fall on this spectrum based on real 2025 data. I know these topics may be hard to consume, but I wanted to paint the real reality of what people are living with and the amount of savings and expenses that go into every month for everyday Americans. And that's why I want to start with the base case. A $55,000 household income after taxes leaves you around $3,800 a month. A base case living situation would be a single income household, maybe urban, with a full-time job of 40 hours and no kids. Rent would leave you between $1,500 a month and take up 30 to 40% of your monthly income, possibly renting a small unit in an older building or sharing space with roommates. Regarding car and gas expenses, costs around $500 a month for an older vehicle with occasional maintenance issues and the need for a vehicle and car in the US due to a lack of public transportation and the need to travel greater and greater distances due to the high cost of rent in those more metro areas. Food and utilities expenses around $800 with careful grocery shopping, limited dining out, and saving on those small bills where you can. I also put in $900 on other expenses for cell phone, insurance, debt payments such as credit cards and student loans, and other minor monthly expenses. Totaling to a remaining disposable income per month would be around $100 to $200 with this base case scenario. This is essentially living paycheck to paycheck. Savings are minimal or non-existent depending on the month. There's no room for retirement contributions or investing, and your one emergency car repair or missed work due to illness or medical costs could trigger a debt spiral. And due to this, you may have to rely on credit cards, family support, or government aid. In this base case scenario at $55,000 a year, you are in constant stress. You have limited upward mobility and you're in constant financial distress, worrying about where the extra expense might come from month to month, not being able to build up an emergency fund. Without outside support or major career progression, you are part of this 60% statistic, and without either of those things happening, you're not able to save and you're living paycheck to paycheck. This brings me to the worst case scenario, one that is shocking when numbers are put together and what many people who have this income are living in currently. Your yearly take-home pay is around $35,000 after taxes, which nets you a monthly income of around $2,400. This person and their living situation is usually a minimum wage job, possibly part-time with inconsistent hours, usually single, non-married young adult on their own. Rent is around $1,000 a month because this is the cheapest you could find in a high crime area and in a poorly maintained neighborhood, 10 to 20 miles away and sometimes even further. Rent consumes nearly half of your monthly income. Car and gas, while penny pinching, is around $400. You have a very old vehicle needing frequent repairs, and you still rely on public transit, sometimes not even having a car, while insurance is still costly because you're young. Food and utility is around $700, with a heavy reliance on food stamps and food banks. Other expenses average to around $600, including debt payments on credit cards, only paying the minimum, payday loans, basic phone services. This person is in survival mode. No savings, no investment, and they are barely surviving month to month. Emergency costs mean skipping rent or utilities. They are in constant stress. Their income situation is a burden on their mental health and mental strain, and they see no path upward without external help. They can't afford healthcare, car repairs, or job retraining. They likely have a negative net worth, and their debt is growing from month to month. If this person in this income bracket has dependents, such as kids, disabilities, or legal issues, this can make things drastically worse. This person isn't even living paycheck to paycheck. They are taking on debt and they are sacrificing their future to just live and meet their basic needs. This is just an example of what thousands and thousands of Americans are living currently and why this system is rigged against us. And that brings me to the best case scenario, or better case scenario, I would say. And these numbers can definitely vary depending on where you live in the US and how you really stretch your money depending on your living circumstance. So given the Census Bureau, you're earning around $100,000 a year, which nets to around $7,500 a month. Your rent is around $1,500 because you value living in a cheaper area and splitting costs to save money. Your car and gas payment per month is around $600 total. You're allowed to spend more money on food and utilities, budgeting around $1,000 in expenses, and this puts you at around $4,000 in savings if you have no kids, a single income with a decent job that has a good understanding of money. But I would say this can vary between $2,000 to $4,000 depending on if you had kids, a spouse, and you incorporated more luxuries in your life, like a better car, apartment, or have got to the point where you have a mortgage. I really want to preface that this is a super rare situation and requires a good location, strong budgeting, and no debt. In this conservative example of around $2,000 to $4,000 being saved for the best case scenario here, you can already see how the system is working for that person compared to those in the two other scenarios I mentioned, just because they are able to buy assets and fight inflation, which are cutting into the wages of the other two examples. In the other two examples, the system exists to keep people desperate. They accept lower paying wages, they create consumer debt just to pay off their necessary bills, which eventually helps banks make interest off of them. And it prevents them from really building wealth. And it's the hidden hand in society which maintains the class structure. Unfortunately, politicians won't fix this because their donors benefit from it. And it's really up to you and yourself to enlighten and understand how this system works and how it's all tied together so that you can start building your own path to helping out your loved ones become more financially free, or just even better yourselves with releasing some of the stress that you maybe have experienced in your past or currently experiencing now. This is really a vicious cycle. Those who have those higher paying jobs, owning businesses, nothing against them. It's just how the vicious cycle works. Even saving money doesn't really protect anyone. If you have $1,000 sitting in your savings account, it's decreasing in value by 3%, if not more, depending on the year over year. Inflation is the thing that silently kills whatever's in your checking account. If you're not investing, you're losing money. Wealth isn't just about income. It's about owning appreciating assets that fight inflation. If you can't save like the first two examples, you stay stuck in the system. You can't invest and you're just stuck in an endless black hole. It is unfortunately the true reality of society which keeps people desperate. My final thoughts are that there are things you can do to get yourself out of this situation, or tell someone who's in it, who you really care about, who can better themselves and at least uplift them into acknowledging what this is all about. Unfortunately, this system has made basic survival unaffordable. Whether you're earning $20,000 to $100,000, the margin for error is razor thin. Rent, insurance, childcare, and inflation all eat away at what is used to be livable income. But you're not alone, and you're definitely not helpless. In future videos, I'll break down practical steps to escape the cycle and potentially rebuild your financial foundation, not only in the literal sense, but the foundations you have in your understanding of how money circulates throughout our system. My number one pieces of advice would be to know exactly where your money goes. Your income is obviously your biggest revenue source, but cutting out those costs and knowing where your money goes is just as important. Relocate if possible, and I would build a pool of money in a cash advantage savings account just so you can relieve some of the stress in your life if those unexpected expenses come up. I would learn how the credit system is used to entrap people on interest payments in order for financial institutions to make money off of those that are vulnerable. I'll do a follow-up on how to actually escape the paycheck to paycheck cycle. Until then, I want to know if you resonated with this. I would really appreciate it if you shared your own experience. That would be really beneficial, not only to myself to understand everyone else's experience and where you might fall in the picture. I really just want to understand how you were able to take yourself out of this vicious cycle that around 60% of Americans are currently dealing with. Hopefully educate those that are watching right now to really better themselves and understand that you are where you are, and with the right tools and mindset in place, anything is possible to where you want to be. I really believe in that, and that'll be what I have for this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Until next time, peace.